Hi, here is ZAPY speaking. Today we bring the other comparison video. The stars of tonight is two presidents of America. First is Mr. Donald Trump, and second is Mr. Barack Obama. In last few weeks, two of them give a speech to the 2020 grads with a slightly different background. Trump gave the talk to West Point. So if you know that school, I believe everybody, so they are the military person, they are ready to serve the country. Whereas the Barack give a speech to every individual in US of the 2020 grad. So same age group with different background. And we want to see how these two presidents address their speech differently to these two really different populations. So here we're gonna start play by the video, and everyone here will provide comments as me and see how they do their speech. Without further ado, we'll start our video. Do you have anything to add at this point, Aaron?
Not at the moment. Let's just jump
in. Not at the moment. Okay, let's just listen and speak. The first one up is Donald Trump speaking at West Point. You can see at the background all here. Let's see what he's talking.
As long as you remain loyal, faithful, and true, then our enemies don't even stand a chance. Our rights will never be stolen. Our freedoms will never be trampled. Our destiny will never be denied. And the United States of America will never be defeated. With the grace of God and the heroes of West Point, America will always prevail. Nothing will stand in your way. Nothing will slow you down. And nothing will stop the West Point class of 2020.
So here I think it's a good place to stop. It basically highlight the feature of this whole video. And let's hear from Aaron about how he dissects this section.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, as with every speaker, there are things that are done well and there are things that are done not quite as well. I'll start with some things that are done well. One, Trump does repeat certain phrases a lot. He kind of got into it here. So never, 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 different things that he'll repeat. A phrase in parallel, so he'll use parallelism, where he says the same sentence structure with a lot of the same words, just changing one or two elements, and that is nice. I think the main challenge I see in this speech is it doesn't feel sincere to me, for a couple big reasons. One of the main reasons is it's how it's shot, so it's very distant. He isn't really looking at the camera at all. But also the way he stands. So you'll notice when he's standing, he's up, and for the first half of it, and he goes back to a more normal position after, but he's got one hand really far forward on the podium and one hand really far back, so he's twisted. He's almost leaning into it. And it makes it seem like he doesn't really care. Because when we lean, we're kind of impartial, like, yeah, I don't care. That's the impression that twist gives. So it makes it feel like he's disinterested. Not to mention the tone of his voice, it doesn't feel like there's punch behind it. And no matter what, it sounds bored. He's kind of leaning back. He emphasizes words, which is awesome. We want to emphasize, we want to make things stand out, but it sounds bored as well. It sounds leaning, like he's leaning back, he's let that lean, oh, well, you will never be beaten. It doesn't have the punch. It almost doesn't match what he's saying. So it doesn't feel sincere. And that's something that I think is critical for speaking. We need to sound sincere. Otherwise, if I don't sound like I believe what I'm saying, why the hell would you believe what I'm saying? So I feel it feels insincere is probably my main thought around this, although he does do some things well, like I said.
Yeah, by this point, as most of our smart audience might guess, today's video topic is about how to be sincere when you deliver a speech. Just a side note here is that we will make a series of these two clips and talk about different points, because there's a lot of things to unpack, because these two people are the great leaders of US, and every message they deliver have multiple angles to it. So like everyone touched base on here, the sincerity. And the one thing Trump used particularly in this video to deliver is he repeat the same idea for 3 times exactly. He begin with that, end with that during my play with of this clip. And that is a common tactic a speaker are using to draw in the attention and to make people feel what they're talking is really, really very important to make an impact in the whole audience. So that's the only one point I want to add to Aaron's comment beside being sincere or not. So then let's flip the coin here, which is Barack Obama. And he has a different attitude towards giving this speech. And he focuses more on the individual to empower each individual. And let's see what he says, and then we'll have a chat about it afterwards.
You're being asked to find your way in a world in the middle of a devastating pandemic and a terrible recession. The timing is not ideal. And let's be honest, a disease like this just spotlights the underlying inequalities and extra burdens that Black communities have historically had to deal with in this country. We see it in the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on our communities, just as we see it when a Black man goes for a jog and some folks feel like they can stop and question and shoot him if he doesn't submit to their questioning. Injustice like this isn't new. What is new is that so much of your generation has woken up to the fact that the status quo needs fixing, that the old ways of doing things don't work, and that it doesn't matter how much money you make if everyone around you is hungry and sick, that our society and our democracy only works when we think not just about ourselves, but about each other. More than anything.
Okay, so here is a sample of the clip to show the characters of Barack. And let's hear from Aaron of how he did differently from Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. So just to revisit the previous idea, I talked about how the angle that we're filmed at matters and the way we hold ourselves. So where Trump was on an angle leaning and the camera's off to one side, which doesn't help him at all, but the camera's off to one side, he's on an angle leaning. In this case, we have Barack Obama very straight on, much closer to the camera, which gives a much more intimate feel, which once again, that's not anyone's, that's not like, this is a conscious choice for Barack Obama. It's not something that Trump could have changed. But in this case, Barack Obama is very close. He's looking at the camera very directly. His shoulders are pointed at. He's not leaning in an unusual way. He doesn't feel like he's disinterested. He's much more up close and direct. And he does interact with the camera a lot more with his emphasis, and he makes it more about the people he's speaking to. And to be fair, this is not a perfect speech. I think there are definitely things I would recommend any speaker do differently in terms of how to maintain engagement. But for example, just to give a quick example, I would actually like to see this kind of speech filmed a little bit further back so that we can use a bit more body language to help communicate the message better. In this case, it's very much focused on facial expression, which is nice for getting very direct emotion, but I think there are better ways of communicating with more body language, and that's individual. But in general, I think that Barack Obama does a better job in this case of getting sincerity across. One way is through his facial expressions. So in psychology, there's a concept called a Duchenne smile. I could be pronouncing that wrong, but it's when there's a fake smile, which is just moving your mouth like that, and it's creepy. And then there's the Duchenne smile, where we actually like squeeze our eyes a little bit, and oh, it's good to see you, right? Which is fake when I try and do it in a fake way. But the idea is it makes it feel real if there's a real smile. And I think one of the nice things about having a closer camera is we get that feeling of sincerity from the different facial expressions. You can really see tiny differences in where the eyebrows are, where the eyes are looking, and how we hold our mouth and our face. So that is one thing that makes it seem more sincere. Another part of it is the way that Obama versus Trump uses their voice. So Obama uses his voice in a way where he makes words show their meaning. For example, when I say the word expansive, I want to make it expansive. I make it bigger. And I think Obama does this well. Like he says, when he says the word just in one of the last sentences we saw there, he says, it's not just. He says the word just shorter because just is supposed to indicate how short something is. It's not just. And he doesn't say it with that high pitch because he's a more serious person than I am. But he uses that word and he shortens it to make it fit what he's saying. So the words sound like they're representing their own meaning, which makes it seem more natural, more real, and ultimately more sincere. So it's through a combination of things, through facial expressions, through the way we deliver words, through our even word choice, we actually create a feeling of sincerity. And of course, there are things that we can control more artificially, like the camera positioning and camera distance. That also has an effect. But I think the biggest part is, do we have a real look on our face? Is the smile real if it's a smile? Is the frown real if it's a frown? Is our word choice matching the way we're delivering it? Are our facial expressions and is our body language really drawing out the most real emotion? And most importantly, do I seem natural? Do I seem like I mean what I'm saying? And in this case, I think Barack Obama does a better job than Trump does of getting across.
I totally agree with Aaron saying, and Aaron did a very beautiful demonstration in very detail. So all I can add at this point is, I just want to look back a little bit of what Trump did at the beginning of this video. If you think about the first 3 seconds, he's like, you have graduated from West Point, and you're gonna go out and conquer and win. And he acts in a way that he's above those military personnel almost, because he's commander-in-chief. So that distance Trump created with the crowd he's addressing is very, very different from Barack, of trying to minimize the distance he has with every individual in front of the screen who's watching him. Mm-hmm. And that is, I would see a big wrong way to look back these two speakers all together. Is one is more further apart, since it's above. The other is like, well, I'm one of you. While in this together, I'm making the slow change, an incremental change. And I think that to do with their personalities and their way of delivery and their leadership style. And these 3 points, which the later 2, we will cover in a series of video afterwards. So today we only cover about how to be sincere, how to be emotionally engaged. But there's more to that. And that's why they are the president. Because when they give a speech, they think about many aspects beyond the speech. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you have anything to add at this point, Aaron?
No, I think you summed it up nicely. And maybe one little thing I'll add is even the fact that, like, the distance you're talking about between the speaker and the audience, the fact that there's a podium in front of Trump adds that extra distance. So it's little things like that I think people often don't think about when they give a lecture, that an object between them and the audience makes them feel further apart. Whereas once we have that nice close-up of, instead of having the object between us, we get really close and we say, I'm addressing you at your graduation. We focus on the face and not about having something in between us. So I think that was a great point.
Thank you. I think we really finished up our first point in our first series, first episode of this whole series, how to be sincere. And being sincere is so important because it lets you engage with the audience. Only if you're engaged, you get a message sinking in. I think that's a good place to finish our episode here. This is ZAPY Speaking, and we are making this comparison video for throughout, and this time we'll do a series. So please welcome and check back into us. There's more this kind of series to come, and we hope by making this, we can give a continuous learning experience for our viewers. So here's ZAPY Speaking. Until we see you next time. Bye.
Bye.